Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Spooktober episode of We Watch Shudder. Man, we're getting close up near the end of the month. Thank you for sticking with us through 31 days of episodes here on We Watch Shudder. My name is JD, and who's here with me?
It's Michelle.
Yay! It's still always Michelle every time.
Always.
Just JD and Michelle talking about Shudder movies. You guys know at this point what's going on. We watch Shudder. That's why the podcast is called that. Always checking out the new original and exclusive releases that come out. And for October, we went all the way back to the beginning of the service and caught up on some original and exclusive releases that came out before we started this podcast. Been talking about them all month long. We got another one for you here today. Michelle, what are we talking about?
We're talking about Slapface.
Slapface! Which is, man, I just right off the bat, let me tell you, Slapface, this one was confusing to me because Slapface is like, that's a weird name for any movie because it doesn't really tell you anything about what kind of a movie it's going to be. And then you see the image that's associated with this movie on the Shudder website, and it's like not even any, like you could have had a million ideas of what a movie called Slapface might be about, and that picture doesn't have anything to do with any of them. I was real curious about this one going in. How's about you, Michelle?
I thought the name was dumb as fuck.
Fair enough. It's a very direct and aggressive way, I think, of saying the same thing I was trying to say.
Yeah, I really hated the name a whole bunch.
Slapface. So, it's maybe not the greatest title in the history of films. But we're going to, as we do, I'm going to give you the official description directly from the Shudder website. And holy shit, it's one sentence, Michelle. It's one sentence for Slapface.
It also tells us nothing.
It absolutely tells us nothing. Here it is. A boy deals with the loss of his mother by creating a dangerous relationship with a monster rumored to live in the woods. A Shudder original. Michelle.
Uh-huh.
Hit us with your spoiler-free thoughts on Slapface. Aside from the fact that you think it's the dumbest title in the history of titles.
I really hate the title. Okay, so that title really was a hurdle to get past because I really did think it was so stupid. I thought the monster was named Slapface. That's what I thought going into this, and I went, the monster's name is Slapface. That is so stupid. So it was something that factored into my enjoyment the first time I watched it because it was a thing I had to get past of like, they made a terrible decision. How on earth could they make a good movie if that's how their decision-making abilities are? But then once you get past that and you start realizing what this movie is actually about, I do think that I enjoyed it. I don't think it went as extreme as I would have liked with the message that it was trying to send, and I do think it was a little convoluted at times, but I do overall enjoy it. There was some stuff that could be improved, but I also think the little boy that stars in this film is very good, and there are some very, very haunting shots. I will give it a 3.25.
3.25 skulls from Michelle on Slapface. I don't disagree. This title was a hurdle going in. In fact, this is one that I almost didn't bother to watch when it first dropped because of the title. That being said, I am so glad I did watch this. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I think it has some obviously some interesting things to say. Deals with some themes that we'll talk about in the spoiler section, but in ways that I think are a little more nuanced than a lesser movie might have done. Like you said, August Maturo, who plays the boy in the film, is fantastic for such just another example of how it's getting really creepy and weird to me, how really talented child actors are. It's like that might be the most horrifying thing about the movie is just how fucking good this apparently like 13-year-old kid is at acting. But no, I really enjoyed it. I think this is a movie that some people are going to see the quote unquote monster design, and it might be too much for them a little. But I loved everything about that. I liked this one even more than you did. This one gets a 4.5 skull from me.
Wow, I did not know you liked it.
I really,
that
really
much.
liked this movie. I thought it had a lot of interesting things to say. I thought it got some really great performances in it, and also just I thought some nice fresh turns on the themes that it's dealing with. And by that I don't mean like more like just the horror tropes, right? Than the philosophical ideas here. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one.
Okay, so that brings it to an average of 3.875 skulls out of 5. Pretty decent score. I think this is one that definitely people should check out and then
Definitely.
come back and listen to our spoiler-filled thoughts, just so that you can kind of have your own opinion. Just
For sure.
ignore the name. Ignore the name. It works against it in so many different ways.
Absolutely. Well, and once you see the movie and you realize the context of the name, like
I still hate
you
it.
can see you can see why they made that decision, but man, it was not the right decision at all.
No, it was not.
I think there's a pretty obvious better name for this movie, and we'll talk about that when we get into the spoilers.
Okay, so if you don't want us to if you don't want us to spoil the movie for you, you should pause, but make sure to come back after you watch the movie, or else you're just never going to know what happened, and you can't have that hanging over you for the rest of your life. So if you want to pause, do it right now.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's get into a spoiler. You really like this. I want to hear your thoughts, and I also want to hear what you think the obvious better name would have been.
The obvious better title for this movie is Virago.
What is Virago again?
Virago is the name of the creature in the movie.
Oh, that's what its name is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Virago.
Yep.
Yeah. Virago. That's why he keeps singing that name in his little song there. It's like an urban legend nursery rhyme. Yeah.
I thought it was just nonsensical words. I didn't realize that was the name of the creature, because I thought she was only referred to as she. I did not realize that was the name. I missed that.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah.
It's like a local legend in that area, right? Like a local urban legend, the Virago who lives out in the woods.
Yeah. Should we give a quick synopsis for people who decided not to watch it and then just hang out?
So this is a movie about a couple of brothers, and again, I'm terrible with names, so I'm pulling it up real quick so that I
Little
can
boy
reference
and big
them.
boy.
Right, little boy and big boy. Lucas and Tom. And Lucas is the young one, Tom is the older one, and their parents died, I believe, in a terrible car accident, and now Tom is left to care for and raise Lucas. And Tom is he's, I think, supposed to be early to mid-20s, maybe late 20s at the latest. Lucas is, maybe 12, 13 years old, 14, early teenager. And it's a lot of this movie is about that struggle and about people who are totally unprepared to deal with things, finding really terrible ways to deal with them. And then Lucas meets a witch creature, a Virago, out in the woods, and then proceeds to wreak havoc on his life and kill a bunch of people. And maybe it's the Virago killing them. Maybe it's actually Lucas. We don't know.
Yep.
Does that about sum it up?
Yeah, that sums it up.
Yeah.
But we are in the spoiler section, so we can talk about at the end, it very, very heavily implies that Lucas was, the one who was killing these people.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely implies that. And then at the end, you get a message about how bullying and at-home abuse can become generational trauma. And I really enjoyed that idea. I just wish that, because what they consider the at-home abuse, which is at-home abuse, but they play Slapface when Lucas gets into trouble, where Tom and Lucas just hit each other back and forth
Sure.
for a while, and that's his form of disciplining his little brother, and his brother thinks this is just normal and like tries to play it with his friend Mariah, and it seems to imply that he takes that too far and that this creature is not the one that did it, that he was the one who sent her to the hospital. And I thought that was all very interesting. I just wish it had been a little bit more extreme in like showing that that was abuse.
Sure.
But I do think it kind of delivers in a way where Tom is saying, you know, I'm not abusing my little brother, and arguing with his girlfriend about it. And there's like this gray area of whether it should be considered. And I know the movie is saying like, yes, it absolutely is. And I wish it had just amped it up a little bit so
Sure.
that there was not that gray area, if
Right,
that makes
and
sense.
I've thought a lot about that, and I think, and again, this is just my interpretation of the Slapface game itself, because that's at least how they refer to it, or how Lucas refers to it. I having seen this movie a couple of times now, I feel like what the Slapface game is supposed to represent is not punishment. Right, like Tom said, like there's an exchange there where they talk about where Tom's talking with Anna, his girlfriend, about how it's a thing they share between the two of them, and I think what the intent there was, it's supposed to be a very exaggerated example of just sort of ideas of toxic masculinity and how to raise young boys into being quote-unquote real men, and about being tough and being strong and not showing your fear and your pain and your emotion and that sort of thing. Because like I say, it becomes almost like a ritual between the two of them in the wake of their parents passing, and I find myself wondering if maybe it wasn't supposed to maybe imply some sort of ties to maybe something that their father did to Tom when he was that age, and we just don't ever talk about that, because again, the movie is about generational trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of got that impression that might be part of what's going on there. Also, I really like that, the movie does sort of at the very end kind of imply that the Virago was all a figment of Lucas's imagination, and this is actually him. But I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case. Like, obviously, that's the metaphor, right? Like, that's that's the implication we're supposed to take from it as an audience. But I do find myself wondering if when they were writing this movie, if within the context of the film, are we supposed to believe that the Virago actually exists? Because he does, they talk about all the time, first she was a breeze, then she was a tree, then she was a witch. And there are several different moments throughout the film where the Virago just disappears, right? So that does happen again at the very end, and I like that, and I'd like to. It's something I would love to ask the director and writer Jeremiah Kipp. Right, just like that's the most interesting thing to me, because like it's something that I really appreciate about a lot of this newer, because this does very much have almost a folk horror kind of vibe to it, definitely in a modern sense. But that sort of very sort of woodsy, witchy sort of vibe. And like a movie like Hereditary, Ari Aster has very clearly said that, yes, this is a metaphorical film, but within the context of the story, the demons are real, the possessions are real. This is something that's actually happening to them. And I'm curious if that's the same here, or if we're supposed to take it as it was all happening in Lucas's head.
I can say that I hope the Virago is not real, because that final shot of Lucas just staring at the camera with the police lights playing across his face, and it just lingers, and you see that trauma and that realization, and then that message pops up about, if I think it says it's bullying. I can't remember if it was like bullying or abuse or what terminology, but it says, get help for it. That really stuck with me more than anything else in this film did. So I think in my interpretation of the movie, I would like to believe that the Virago was not real and that this was all a bigger metaphor, just because that last shot just really, really stuck with me for that reason.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely lean that way as well. Frankly, the reason I bring it up is there are a couple of smaller interviews that I did read after seeing the film where there are some comments made that, I don't know, maybe just the way they come across in the interview is what creates the ambiguity for me there. But yeah, I definitely feel like that's the overall idea. Also, I mentioned earlier that I really liked the design of the Virago monster in this. I love that it's very much like a child's fairy tale witch, right? Like with the big oversized hook nose and the mottled face. But then also it's almost like Sasquatchy, right? Because it's super super tall and lives in the woods, and I really liked the concept of the Virago and the design of it a whole lot. I really enjoyed that.
I think the design was a very good direction to go with this, because that is a design that Lucas could have created in his head. It is a traditional witch with just a few adjustments made, but that is an image that probably all children have seen from watching movies or reading books or whatever it may be. Like, that is what they envision witches as, with just a slight couple changes, because he could get creative with it. So I think it was very smart, because it added to that, like, is this in his head or is it not? It wasn't something where we saw the design and thought there's no way a child could come up with that, and it's too horrific. It's all stuff that is pretty traditional, just with some tweaks here and there.
And the more I sit here and think about it, having just watched the movie again here just earlier today as we're recording this, that, as well as just thinking back, the sequence where they're playing Slapface for one of the last times, and every time Tom hits Lucas, the Virago reacts as if it was struck in the exact same moment and in the exact same way. I think that definitely lends to the idea of it being something that's happening in Lucas's mind. One of the things that took me away from that idea is just the intensity of the destruction and the mayhem in the police station in that sequence when he's coming out of the interrogation room. And I guess you could say in that moment that a lot of that is part of his delusion, and maybe it's because it looks like he didn't just get a gun and shoot a bunch of people. Like, it looks like a fucking tornado went through that place, right? Like, there are light fixtures falling down. There's blood splattered everywhere. And I get that we had the sequence earlier where he kind of ransacked his own house, but this is a step above and beyond that, where it's like beyond believable that it would be something that he would be able to do on his own. And I think that was part of what kind of started pushing me more in that direction. But just sitting here talking about it, I kind of feel like, that sequence does play out kind of in slow motion and in weirdness. And so it may be kind of indicating that he's in sort of a fugue state, and that what we're seeing there is, again, kind of an exaggeration in a lot of ways.
That's definitely how I took it, because he does have a family friend who is a police officer. He's a young kid. Maybe security wasn't as high as they implied it was, because they thought he had just hurt somebody who was his age. He could have just walked out of there for all we know. Like, they didn't lock the door. They thought this kid's not a risk, and it could be exaggerated to the point where, like, none of that really happened.
Oh, well, I definitely believe that something happened there, because, again, like, Tom hears that when Tom is confronted by those two cops at the hospital, as they're getting ready to leave, he overhears the police radio saying, "You guys got to get down here. It's a horrifying, like it's a massacre or whatever it was that he said." So something definitely happened there. I just don't think it was necessarily quite as chaotic as that sequence presents as he's walking through it.
I didn't really believe that scene played out the way that it did, because Lucas didn't actually see that. He didn't see anything in the hospital. That could all be, if this is told from Lucas's perspective, kind of like that could not have happened either. I don't know which parts of this movie I really believe are real.
Right. Well, and I know what you mean there, but again, where that the big thing that sticks out to me that at least something happened at the police station is in that separate sequence where Tom is being asked to leave the hospital, and he overhears the radio call come into those other officers, because Lucas is nowhere to be found in that scene. So I feel like something happened.
That's
it's just
what I'm talking about, though. I'm saying, like, that scene might not have happened at all, is what I'm saying. Like, if this was from, like, Lucas's perspective, like, Mike could have, or Tom, sorry, his actor's name is Mike, but like maybe he never even like went to the hospital, and like that's what I mean. Like I don't know how much of this is reality.
I think there's a major significance in why he's at the hospital, right? Why like he's at the hospital because his brother may have killed this girl and then she died. And so he's kind of there keeping an eye on things. I guess I didn't take any, like, I definitely, I think anything that Lucas is involved in, anytime he's on screen and anything he's involved in is definitely questionable. But I also came away for sure with the impression that everything that happens when he's not on screen and involved is definitely happening. Like there's a thread running through this entire movie of the authorities knowing that this kid has some violent tendencies and some problematic tendencies, right? So yeah,
I just don't know how he would do the police stuff at all. Like, how would he kill any of them?
Well, I mean, there's a moment in that sequence where he leans down and picks up a gun from one of the dead officers. And I find myself wondering if at some point the implication is that somehow he got a hold of somebody's gun and got away. Again, I'm not I'm not totally suggesting that but I guess that's just the way I interpreted it. Is that something happened there? It just wasn't as extreme as it seemed as he was actually walking through the chaos.
Okay. I found that scene really interesting because I truly think this was all in his head, and I don't understand that part. And I don't understand, like, it very much implies that the Virago is real, but everything else seems to imply that it isn't. And the way that it would work out of him actually committing that is so unbelievable to me that I was trying to figure out, like, how would I justify this in my mind? So I'm very curious. That's why I just wanted to delve into it a little bit deeper, because I don't understand that scene. I don't know how it plays out in either scenario.
Well, like
perfectly.
I said, that's the one scene where it because everything else pushes me towards clearly this is all happening in his head. But that's the one scene where I'm like, well, is it or is it not, or what part?
Same with me. Yeah,
it's a very interesting scene in the overall scope of the film for sure. Because they even come back to a shot later on of like those officers running into the cop shop, and like I get that you could argue that the kid just escaped and that's why all those cop cars come screaming up with their lights on to the house, but if he just escaped and there wasn't like severe violence involved, like would there be that level of a response? I guess maybe yes, maybe no. I feel like the level of response involved there, but we could nitpick that scene all day long. The movie, in the grand scheme of things, it definitely has some things to say about the problems of trauma piled on top of trauma. I also think it does a really good job of pointing out where Tom is going wrong, while still making him a sympathetic character as somebody who's not he's not an abusive asshole. He's just somebody who was put in a situation that he was absolutely not prepared for and is failing and fumbling it because he was not prepared for it, and he shouldn't be in this position in the first place. Yeah, even Mariah, the girlfriend who also participates in his bullying, like, there's a part of me that wants to hate that little girl because she's like one of the worst people in this whole movie. But at the same time, you have to take into account that she's like a 13-year-old girl, and like we all do some dumb shit to fit in when we're 13. You know, it's yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed this movie. Not super heavy on the horrifying elements. I think if you're a person who doesn't like real aggressively scary movies, this one is definitely one you can probably handle, and it just has some interesting things to say.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I don't have much more to say about it. I do have questions about it.
But you know what we should do? We should put
curious.
together a list of questions, and we should tweet at writer-director Jeremiah Kipp and see if maybe he'll talk to us about that police station scene. And give us
do you
an
think
idea.
he'd talk to us if the number one question is, why the fuck did you choose that name? It's awful. If that's the first tweet, do you think he'd respond to anything else with kindness?
Well, no, and that's why we're not going to make that the first tweet, Michelle.
Okay,
we're
that's fair.
I just, because
I won't tweet him then. I'll let you.
I find
write the
myself
tweet.
wondering, honestly, if at some point in its production this movie was called Virago, but then maybe some producer somewhere said that's too weird and like arcane and odd a name. We need something that's a little more straightforward and understandable and marketable. And so they were just like, okay, let's call it, I don't know, Slapface. Maybe
the
that's
Bye-Bye
how
Man
it
is
happened.
taken, so. But maybe if we ask Jeremiah Kipp, why is that name so stupid, he'll get to rant about the producers for a while, and that would be nice.
Maybe.
Only
Jeremiah
one way
Kipp,
to find out.
We love your movie, buddy. You gave it a bad moniker, but man, we love your movie anyway. It's fantastic.
And we have questions.
Yeah, we do have questions. So yeah, I think we both definitely agree you should check this one out. I personally found it really. I'm real curious to see what else this August what's his name does going forward, because like you said, that especially that last shot in the film. Where it's just zooming in on him. Man, it almost, in that shot, it's almost like part of what's going on there is he's slowly realizing, oh, shit, I did this. Like,
That's what I
just
took it
in the way
as,
that's
yeah.
happening in his face there, now that I think back on it. So, yeah, it's go check out Slapface, guys. Michelle, how many Spooktobers do we have left?
Oh my gosh. Well,
There's
we
like
only
three,
have three.
right?
3 and 1 original/exclusive.
So we got
is all that's left.
4 episodes left in the month, 3 Spooktober back episodes left.
Yep, almost done with them.
Oh, man.
And then the
one of
podcast
them,
ends forever.
Right,
Spooktober
yeah.
is our
No.
finale.
One of them is a movie that as of this recording, I still haven't seen for the first time. I've been kind of putting it off, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. But we'll talk about that as we get through it. We got
Absolutely.
we got like 3 more of these to record in the next week to get them all done before October. Let's see if we can churn them out. That means we got to stop this one and get the next one done. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.
Yay!